So it's great to invite back to our microphones Joey Colangelo, a president of Local 246 SCIU that's down here in Philadelphia. Of course, uh, Joey's members keep the entire fleet of New York City rolling. And Joseph Puleo, Local 983, DC 37, whose skilled trades and chauffeurs and parks officers make New York City livable. Good morning, the two Josephs.
Good morning
to you, Bob. Nice to have you, Joe.
All right. And so, Joe Colangelo, since you're down here and it's SAU week, so to speak, talk to us a little bit. Give us a postcard. What's it like for you? You've been doing this for a while. What does a convention like this afford you and your members?
Well, to take it back, I've been doing this, since the early 90s when I first got on the executive board. So I've been through a lot of, changes with SEIU where they upped their profile, starting with Andy Stern. And then, most recently now the latest change, the fight for 15, the healthcare for all. I mean, SEIU has been in the conversation. Mary Kay, of course, was the fight for 15. But to take it back, like I said, it's been a high-profile union. We fought for a lot of different improvements for the average working person. When healthcare for all was first introduced, it was like a pie-in-the-sky dream. But Andy Stern was able to get that across the finish line under the administration of Barack Obama, which helped millions upon millions of Americans, right, that couldn't afford health care. Mary Kay was the fight for 15. At the time when that was first introduced, again, seemed like a pie in the sky, $15 minimum wage. But the fact of the matter is she got it over the finish line. Now, the next generation, April was, nominated and won yesterday as the new president of the International. Her goal is to, get 1 million more members in the next decade. And I feel confident that, based on the track record of SEIU, that's going to get done. Because the fact of the matter is we need strong unions to fight back against the corporate greed, to fight back against the powers that are against us, the big money players that always try to keep the workers down, suppress wages, and increase their bottom line for the billionaires. And that's and like I said, the fights have always been, they're never going to make it happen. But the fact of the matter is, we do make it happen, and they will make it happen.
Well, and of course, Joe Puleo, you're affiliated with ASME as the parent union for DC 37, and what a deep and rich connection with Dr. King. Of course, it
Absolutely.
was down in Memphis that Dr. King went on behalf of striking sanitation workers, too, who were tragically killed by their own compactor in their garbage truck. And so I guess this connection between civil rights and agency and workplace justice are all connected. I'm just wondering, you've been in this game for a while. Did you ever think we'd see the UAW win something in Chattanooga by 3-1?
I was always hopeful. You know what I mean? We had a lot of setbacks, but, ultimately, union's the way to go. You know what I mean? And it just was, the sleeping giant. It took a while for, everybody to realize the true value of what unions are. And we're seeing the turn, we're seeing the turn go back towards us. And people are finally getting it. This new generation, right, has shifted, from the previous one into believing that they're going to ride the corporate ladder. They've seen it through their peers. They go up 2 notches and come back 3. It's not something sustainable, and unions are sustainable. And we're definitely on the uptick. And I think, like Joe said, I'm going to be positive, right, and say that this is a bit of a renaissance that we're going through, and we hope to see a whole lot more of it.
Now, one of the things, Joe Colangelo, is that I don't know which writer said that intelligence was holding two contradictory ideas in your head at the same time, maybe. One of the things that's happening in the city of New York, we do see, and there was some progress made up in Albany to try to rebuild the service of civil service post-pandemic. And I know that you lost members during the pandemic. For essential workers.
Yes.
There was no sanctuary from COVID. But the reality is in New York City, under the current kind of almost Bloomberg-esque budget that Mayor Adams is pursuing, we're seeing a very draconian approach to replacement of skilled labor. And so I know Joe raised this. We'll talk about this a little bit about the Department of Parks and some real troubling things there. But you were telling me that we are not doing succession planning. And if we want to keep the motor fleet reliably running and not rely on outsourcing, which is so potentially rife with corruption, all the city top, what's going on in that picture there? We're not doing right by the civil service and nor by taxpayers long term, because we're not replacing these skilled hands, are we?
No, and you know what happens is that when there's a hiring freeze, the papers just put out it's a hiring freeze. But what has really actually happened behind the scenes? There is a policy with a hiring freeze where there is a 2-to-1 replacement policy, meaning for every 2 workers that leave, they're only allowed to fill one of those lines. So, you know, I gave a huge presentation back in 2019 at a city council hearing regarding staffing level, just for my union, trades unions. The amount of equipment that the city has, and I'll just focus on my area, right? The amount of equipment that the city has, the ratio of mechanic to equipment should be around 11 to 1, depending on the type of fleet, right? So when you have a mixed fleet where you have small, medium, and heavy duty fleet, it's around 7 to 1. We are nowhere near that. We were like 15 to 1. So what does that do? That puts pressure on the current workforce. It increases overtime costs. It increases out-of-service percentages that are critical, especially when you talk about fleets with ambulance and first responders and fire apparatus and police cars and sanitation trucks, whose mission, especially in sanitation department, is to keep the city streets clean, because the fact of the matter is you have a health emergency if you don't. So now, if you don't have the workers that need to provide that critical equipment to be ready at any given time, you start falling behind. And as you fall behind, you can't catch up. And we're seeing that now, because what we're seeing now is, and it's a cycle as well, we see the huge increase in retirements. Post-pandemic, we've seen that across the board. It's affecting my membership. I now see a reduction. I have a head count now that is similar to the early years of the Bloomberg administration, which is going to create a serious problem with maintaining the fleet and keeping the fleet at a service number. That's a reference we use, the word we use, at a service number at a manageable level. And once you start reaching out of services that are uncontrollable, you can't get back. You know, my head count is way down. I'm down close to 15-20% of where my high should be. And where my high should be is nowhere near where it actually should be for a fleet the size of the city of New York, which has over 30,000 pieces of equipment. So, you know, the papers just say hiring freeze, but behind the scenes, it's much worse than that. And we're seeing that across the board, not only with my union, but with staffing levels throughout the city of New York and all the city agencies. And then, of course, the recruiting people has always been an issue and becomes much harder. You know, as we move forward with fewer and fewer workers out there to replace these specifically trades jobs. We're seeing that across the board, though.
And so, Joe Pulio, the scenario sounds somewhat the same. Give us the picture of what's happening, and because you have heavy concentration in parks and Department of Transportation. What's the picture for Local 983?
Well, similar to Joe, the same thing. The 2-for-1s is the death sentence. It's the slow death. You know, it's the quiet killer. It's not like it was. It's not publicized. Like 2-for-1, like Joe says, it's in an extinction mode. Especially when you have high attrition to start off with, and the lack of people interested in these positions in the first place. Although we did get a reasonable, salary this last contract, the cost of living in New York far supersedes it, especially in rent. So all those factored in, we've taken a big hit on our workforce. And like Joe says, who's going to do the work when there's this deficiency? They're going to try to force it on overtime, like he said, and make us work more, for the ones that are there. But it's going to create this void that the city so desperately needs.
Well, and I do want to drill down a bit because you were telling me about the parks budget, and we know after what happened with the COVID that the parks were essential. And there's all kinds of documentation that talk about, for low wealth and struggling people. And we know now, dear Lord, 1 in 4 children living in poverty in New York City.
Yes.
Their vacation is the park. And so what is going on there? We know the mayor came on strong, signed on to the pledge of 1% funding. It's a little wonky, but tell folks, your head's in these details of policy all the time. What's that 1% of the budget committed to open space? What's that all about? Unwind that for us.
Okay, this is a campaign that started actually over 20 years ago, right before 9/11. And then 9/11 took center stage, and it took a while for it to gain momentum again. We got it to the point where when Mayor Adams ran, that he was supportive of this plan. Every municipality throughout the country has 1% or better for the budget. We have 0.06%, and that's still due to the financial crisis in the 70s. It never got restored. Now, people that are more well-to-do, they have these conservancies in their neighborhood parks, but for the most part, most communities are struggling, and they cannot afford to put their own personal resources when they're barely making it as is. So we're back to not only did we not get the 1%, we got a reduction in staff. Right now, we currently have, and I testified yesterday, 600 jobs on the line. And like you just mentioned, we went from essential workers where everybody was in compliance, even our lowest wage earners, the city seasonal aides, adhered to all the COVID mandates. And we went from that to now disposable. And we need to, first of all, phase one is get these jobs restored. Restorations is number one. Number two is we have to go back to what the mayor promised, 1% for parks, and we don't have to spend all of our resources every year, begging back for the jobs that people currently have. That's, where we should be.
Well, and so, Joe Colangelo, one of the things that Joe Puleo had mentioned to me a while back is that the labor market had shifted. Back in the day, when we all of a certain generation hired on, it was a different job market, right? So the benefit of public employment loomed large compared to the private sector and wages. Can you talk about, particularly in the mechanics sphere, if you've got your act together and you're a talented young person and know what to do with your hands and your skill, there's a challenge for the city civil service to stay competitive. Can you take us inside that market reality?
Well, I mean, I see it because I'm also the chairman of the Coalition of Building Trades, which represents all city employees, right? Trades jobs in general, right? Even mechanic, carpenters, electricians. We don't see the interest that we did years ago. There were a lot of trade schools in the city of New York, Edison High School, Brooklyn Automotive. I went to Aviation High School. So all these trade jobs kind of, some students are attracted to that. So that mindset was very, and there was, of course, again, the labor pool was much more in the city of New York, much more working class. So you had a lot of kids were growing up and their parents were in the trades, and so they followed suit. So what you're seeing now, and specifically with the trades job, it seems like, oh, there's an interest. We're going to send everybody to college, and we're going to give them
Right.
the reality that, oh yeah, you're going to go to college. You're going to spend, and again nowadays you're going to spend $200,000, and this is going to put you on a path to success. The fact of the matter is, which we try to speak about, is that these trade jobs are very well-paid positions, and that there is a career path for taking up trades positions.
Well, Joe Colangelo, you know as well as I do that often that $200,000 is a pathway to your parents' basement.
Yeah, listen, and when I say $200,000, Bob, we're talking about state schools. State schools now are running $30,000, $40,000 a year. So it's become very expensive. I'm not downplaying it by any means, but we need to show the young people that there are opportunities out there, that these careers do pay well, and that you can have a fruitful life and you could build yourself up in the working class. The fact of the matter is you're seeing a turn to the civil service jobs because of the benefits the civil service jobs provide. Most companies out there don't give family medical coverage. The unions then supplement that coverage. We give prescription drug coverage. We give dental coverage, optical. So we put that out there when we try to do these trades fairs, or when I go speak at the high school level. I do it at Future in Focus with the UFT. We try to tell these young students because, and one of the things I always fall back on is that when I grew up, everybody was in a union. What do I mean by that? I started out as an 18-year-old working in an auto parts store part-time who was unionized. Nowadays, you talk to these young people, they probably don't even have anybody in their family that's in the union. They have no concept of what it means. They don't realize the benefits that are out there. And specifically with the city of New York, regardless of what you want to do in your life, there is a job for you in city government because there's a career path. Whatever your passion is, you can find it in civil service, and it provides you good benefits, good security for your family, and, of course, provide you a future that you won't be living in squalor when you retire because we provide pensions as well. So these are the messages we try to get out there.
Be careful, Joe. We're going to get into the territory of Medicare Advantage, and we don't have a full hour to talk about that.
No, we don't. I'm gonna stay quiet on that one. How's that?
I know. Joe Pooh, I just wanted to ask you about this, the gap in chauffeur. You were telling me a while back that this is really, we just got like a minute or so, that there's a real gap in what is being paid in the private sector. If, like, for instance, if you want to drive for Amazon versus driving for essential city services.
Absolutely. There's been a shift on how we purchase items today. Most people now, instead of going to brick and mortar stores, they go purchase on Amazon and other companies like those online. So there's been more of a demand for drivers, CDL drivers. A CDL driver's license is high demand. It's almost like Joe would appreciate this, a pilot's license. I know he likes that.
Oh, I know.
It is, yeah, and it's well paid. And the city has not come to market rate with these jobs. So, we had to think outside the box, and we had a little bit of equity money, thanks to Henry Garrido. I have to give him credit from that. Out of the citywide package, we were able to get a $5,000 yearly bonus for these drivers because we were so severely understaffed. We went from thousands to hundreds throughout the city of New York, as well as the authorities and CUNY. So, we're not making the same pace as prevailing rates that are out there now today. We, need to fill in the gap, and pay what the outside is currently paying those drivers.
And Joe Colangelo, is there a similar gap popping up now with mechanics?
Well, we're very competitive for the city mechanics. The problem is finding qualified candidates. We just did that the last two contracts. Our wages are substantially better than they were, and of course substantially better than what we see on the outside. So there's a real recruitment from mechanics from the dealerships, because the fact of the matter is we do make a better wage. We do provide health care. City provides health care.
And the union, I mean, we're bearing the lead. That's the whole point of the program. You've got that collective protection. We know from the research that if in the pandemic, essential workers represented by a union had a much better survival rate.
Yeah. But like I said, the recruitment for us is more on the side of, young people wanting to do these jobs. And that's really been a problem, but it's across all the trades as well.
So how can Joey Colangelo, how can you people get a hold of you if they want to follow up on an opportunity like that?
Well, listen, they could always go to our website. That's NYC Local 246. They could always reach out. We tell the kids when we go to these trades fairs, go on DCAS, that's Department of Citywide Administrative Services website. You do a job search, and they'll list all the jobs that are open in the city of New York, or positions that are open. So we try to, direct people at that. But of course, you search our website, and then we could direct people, contact the office, and we direct people there, or send us an info. You could send an email through that website, and we respond to all those emails as well.
All right. Listen, thanks so much. My two Joes, I really appreciate it. You gave us a lot of essential information. That's Joey Colangelo, Local 246 SCIU, and Joseph Puleo, Local 983 DC 37 AFSCME in New York. Democracy Now! Is up next. Remember, we get the world we fight for, nonviolently.
Never told me what was right or what was wrong. Never taught me to play guitar, never taught me to write songs. One thing that she taught me I'll remember for all time, and that's that you should never walk across a picket line. Oh, I would never walk across a picket line. Solidarity forever don't mean just sometimes. Long live the Union, cross my heart and hope to die. If I should ever walk across a picket line. She took me to the factory where the workers were on strike. The company had called in staff to break the union's might. Mom went to the front and she addressed those greedy swine. Said, I dare any of you men to walk across the picket line. Oh, I would never walk across a picket line. Solidarity forever don't mean just sometimes. Long live the Union, cross my heart and hope to die. If I should ever walk across a picket line. One of them came forward and he had something to say. No woman will stand between me and one day's pay. I don't care about the others, I am taking what is mine. That who tried to walk across our union's picket line. Oh, I would never walk across a picket line. Solidarity forever don't mean just sometimes. Long live the Union, cross my heart and hope to die. If I should ever walk across a picket line. Mom called him a dirty scab and gave him 2 pieces of her mind. She picked up and she threw every rock that she could find. And when he called the cops on her, she kicked his behind and said, that's what you get when you walk across a union's picket line. Oh, I would never walk across a picket line.